Good day all, RobotnikHolmes here. Hey, finally tackling the main series. About time, eh? To start off this review, as you might have noticed, I look different from earlier. Yeah, I decided to change up my look so I can fit with my appearance on my Tumblr blog. Plus, I rather like my human OC. Anyway, we got past the original Sonic miniseries, all 4 issues of them, which you can check out if you like. They're not that important in the grand scheme of things, what with their stories being self-contained, even when compared to these ones, but I'd certainly not brush them away, as they made the way for the main series to exist. Right, look alive ladies and gentlemen and everyone in between. Today we're going to be examining the first 2 issues of the Sonic the Hedgehog series by Archie Comics. For the first in the series, I like this cover a lot. It's got all the characters on it, it's got the threats they'll be facing, and they are fighting in what appears to be the empty void that is my soul. There are a few errors I've noticed, such as Sally Acorn and the Badnik's colours, and Antoine appears to be missing a yellow patch of fur around his eye. Regardless, this cover is iconic, and I reckon it's a perfect representation of the comic in its early glory. The first story starts off with our villain, Dr. Robotnik, hoisting up a pinata version of Sonic? Okay matey, you do you. It's pretty silly a scene for the dictator who took over 99% of the planet, which even he notices is mediocre for him. One of his robot dudes comes in with a plant, which doesn't help with the doctor's mood at all, but he sees that the small sapling, known as Kudzu, is actually completely mechanical and can grow at an alarming rate. This gives Robotnik a plan. Well, technically it was his Swapbot's plan, but whatever. Meanwhile, Sonic and Sally are, actually getting along and planning strategically. Nah, this is all just to showcase Antoine feeling left out. Yep, our cowardly coyote has the hots for Sally, so he goes out for some fresh air to think of how to woo her. This proves to be a mistake, and Son and Sal both realise too late that the dude's been captured by the twisted Kudzu weeds. Antoine is entwined. Yeah, same here, Sonic. The Hedgie rescues the likes of Antoine while also shallowly uttering that he is not a friend, and he proceeds to do a supersonic fetal position spin to free Antoine. The heroes are able to make it out just in time, and they flee back to the underground knothole base. Down there, Boomer, formulates a plan to free Antoine from his bonds, particularly by brandishing a huge freaking chainsaw. Oh, that was just another quick joke that the comic loves doing so much. And they just tear the stuff off into, of all things, a bucket. However, Tails comes in and becomes a dum-dum for the sake of the plot. He does the unthinkable and decides to water the plants, potentially bringing them back to life and dooming everybody in Knothole. Oops. Dr. Robotnik is glad to see his plans working perfectly, with Kudzu infesting the entire Great Forest. He even sends an entire squadron of buzz bombers, just in case you thought the guy wasn't already overdoing it. Back with Sonic and friends, on Tuesdays at 10, they are perfectly safe. The Kudzu weeds were actually allergic to water, which gives Boomer an idea on how to combat the threat. What happens next is one page of the threat being averted and Dr. Robotnik blaming the bots for his failure. Story 2 involves our main hedgehog going on a mission alone after the freedom fighters all strike a perfect chorus. However, it's not to stop a polluting factory or the trees from being chopped down, it's to go to where they pinpoint Dr. Robotnik would make a speech. A perfect plan. Sonic then tells us, the audience, to plug in the Sega Genesis and play Sonic 2's Casino Night Zone to get him there. I mean, it's not exactly like the comic, and the inclusion of game stuff is neat, but aren't you supposed to be protecting Knothole from the guy who rules the planet? Our blue hero makes it to the game canon zone, where we see a plethora of casino/gambling related jokes. My favourite one has got to be this one. Dr. Robotnik is uncovered and he reveals that his super secret plan that he came to make a speech about revolved around Orbinaut. Yeah, the regular Badnik type. And Sonic is found out in the crowd and bonked in the head. When the blue bugger comes to, he finds himself in Dr. Robotnik's captive and is tortured mercilessly by being shoved into a pinball machine. Alright, there's some pretty neat visuals at least in this weird ass story. Eventually, Sonic is able to make it out there, because he's Sonic the fricking Hedgehog, and he proceeds to lay the smack down, even reflecting one of Orbinaut's spiky maces. Hey, that's not even possible! What game am I playing? Sonic leaves while saying an acronym involving bingo, and Casino Night just blows to Kingdom Come. Okay, I'm not sure how he did that. I guess Sonic fed the slot machine copies of Sonic 06 and the place just bombed. Thank you. Thank you. Where was I? Oh yeah, the story raising. Unlike the Sonic mini-series, there's a clear comparison to be made from these and the original SatAM cartoon. Not necessarily in terms of plot or characters, as they're still given comedy akin to that of a sitcom. The threat of the mechanical weed Krudzu was a nice idea, and a real threat to Antoine and the others. It's a shame it's defeated by such simple means, water, and in one page it is resolved thanks to a thunderstorm. Interestingly, I also noticed this time that a few beats in the plot were ripped straight out of the TV show, including Dr. Robotnik sending a whole swarm of buzz bombers on the forest, and when he trapped Sonic within a giant pinball machine. The idea that he'd go and announce his evil plans to an audience of robots also reminds me of the pilot for the Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog cartoon, which had a similar setup. Besides the minor serious plot, the story still has many detours to panels of visual and written comedy, such as Sonic breaking the fourth wall and the freedom fighters calling for help only to ask Sonic to fold up the map properly. Although the second story didn't go too far with mixing cartoon and game content together, it's still a fine read thanks to Gallagher's witty writing. For the story, I'm giving it a plain 2 out of 5. The art is done by Dave Malak, the same dude who drew 75% of the miniseries. It appears in the months between when that and this issue were released, his style has become a bit more defined. Sonic and the cast have stubbier noses, and Antoine in particular looks much taller this time around. Another visual detail is that they finally got Dr. Robotnik's eyes the right colour. Can't say the same for his characterization though. In this issue it's his badniks who come up with the plans for him, which makes him a little less threatening and a bit more bumbling. As a main villain, it makes him less like SatAM Robotnik and more like the other one. The other characters are on point in terms of characterization. I do like that we get to see a bit more of Antoine, like more than just his cowardness. Sonic is the witty ball of jokes that always evades being in trouble, but it is shown here that he also cares for his friends, and Antoine, which is nice to show in the first issue. In terms of art and characters, I'm giving it a 3 out of 5. It's time for extra bits, and bloody hell there's a bunch in this issue. First off, we got some bumper stickers for your car. They're more of a joke, I think. I hope they are anyway. You won't see me attach any of these to my vehicle. Also, I suppose to fill up the space, we get a couple pages at the end dedicated to one-off jokes. Likewise, they don't add much, other than allow more cartoony slapstick, but they're harmless. And with that, the total score for issue number 1 is 5 out of 10. An average score of an average start. Now, let's take a gander at number 2 of the Sonic comics. The cover this time is of Sonic on a wanted poster, with the ominous big bad in the foreground promoting Robotnik's rats. A little random. I suppose this was to get the interest of younger readers, otherwise it's typical Dave Malak style. The first story starts with Robotnik throwing darts at a Sonic dartboard in rage over his nemesis. Hang on, this is pretty much how the last issue started, complete with the same crab-meat robot talking to him. Funnily enough, Dr. Robotnik says that he has failed him in both the limited series and the main comic book so far, so he decides to utilise a different badnik entirely. We get introduced to Coconuts, notably an enemy from Sonic the Hedgehog 2, but he appears to have his design lifted directly from the other cartoon, although his colouring is still rather off. Coconuts is gung-ho about dealing with our hero Sonic, so much so that he makes another bad pun. I think crab meat sums up my opinion rather well. Meanwhile, Sonic and Tails is just kind of running around until they come across a strange crater. However, it is really an ambush set by Coconuts. Unlike in the games, where you can just kill the robot by bonking him in the head, Sonic and Tails find the monkey and toss his bomb around. Showing that Coconuts is basically nothing without his hiding in trees tactics, the heroes are easily able to destroy him with his own bomb. In a rather gruesome instant, Dr. Robotnik has apparently mailed back Coconut's decapitated head. However, the big guy has other bots to send at Sonic and Tails instead. Oh, wait, that's just Scratch and Grounder. They're members of the super special Sonic Search and Squash Squad. Is this comic out of field already and is just resorting to the other cartoon for ideas? The pair of robots already proved to be pretty dumb, with them both bickering and being their own foils. However, Sonic and Tails are able to find them. Humorously, Sonic responds with one of 3 answers in a dialogue tree style. I gotta admit, that got a chuckle out of me when I first read it. Scratch and Grounder are lured to a cliff edge where Sonic promptly deals with them, even though they're not very worse for wear afterwards. They'd be destroyed if this was the cartoon. However, Sonic, and the audience to an extent, underestimate the duo, as Grounder is able to produce a rope and Scratch drags our hero onto the floor. Man, surprising that these two are the most competent threat to the Hedgehog so far in this comic. They're not perfect, however, and Scratch's bickering causes them both to be distracted. Grounder even fricking pepper sprays him. Sonic uses this chance to incapacitate them both, and he leaves them in the dust as Dr. Robotnik says his famous line from the other cartoon. That was pretty fun, I like that story. Story 2 just involves Sonic. He's running around collecting rings like he does in the game. Funny they implemented the rings like this. Usually they're in the Lake of Rings, but here they're everywhere. However, suddenly our hero finds himself being launched by a spring, entering a tubular tunnel that leads him to the special zone? Oh no, it actually sends him to this trippy looking unknown zone that has wonky gravity. It is also where he meets Vertical and Horizontal, two characters who have no bearing on anything except to drive the poor hedgehog bonkers. After sending him to and fro while spouting nonchalant dialogue, they drop him back on Mobius and it's done. What? Yeah, that second story was pretty out there. Did they have no idea what to write, so they just made things up on the spot? What even was that story? At the end, Al and Cal suggest sending them a letter to let the publisher know that they want to see more of them. But the only thing I'm sending them is a tactical carpet bomb. So, while I kind of don't care for the second story, the first one I felt was okay. It didn't star many of the SatAM cast and instead used concepts and characters from Adventures, which is odd. You'd think Gallagher writing the story was watching the cartoon but then accidentally changed the channel and thought that they were the same source material? Regardless, the writing itself wasn't that bad, just something I wish was more rooted in the SatAM universe. If I wanted to see Scratch and Grounder being ordered by Dr. Robotnik and foiled by Sonic and Tails, I just watched The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. All in all, the story gets a 2 out of 5. Mainly for the second one. Screw Al and Cal. It's a shame the Freedom Fighters never got to meet Scratch and Grounder, because they're both from different cartoons. Sonic and Tails act goofy and comical, with Sonic being especially smug in this issue, while Scratch and Grounder don't get involved in much absurd slapstick. They still bicker like rowdy siblings. The second story has nice visuals, but it feels more hollow, like it's just trippy visuals for the sake of it. I mean, I know the comic is aimed towards kids, but the cartoon was also, and it didn't waste our time with silly stories. Well, sometimes. Cal and Al are also very uncanny. They're human-looking beings from another dimension, they don't fit in with the established universe one bit, and just after they're introduced, they disappear like nothing happened. For the art, as much as Dave Manak tries, it could have been done on better characters. It gets a 1 out of 5. There are other pages too, most of them being more one-off gags that we're rather used to at this point. Here we have Sonic, starring in things before he became the hero in the comic, all of which rhyme with Sonic and get looser and looser as they go on. Near the end, we see pin-up art of Sal- Oh wait, Sonic stole it! You creepy doofus, what are you planning on doing with that? Well, at least in the next page, we're treated to pin-up art of- Oh no, Sally, you too? Man, I hope this pin-up art is referring to the end pages in the comic books and not... This issue's total score is a 3 out of 10. Kind of the worst score so far, huh? Well, it's because it does not add much after the first issue. Instead, it takes cues from the Adventures cartoon and whatever pit of hell Al and Cal came from. This issue just runs with the whimsical comedic tones, which would be great if it wasn't abandoning the story elements it had already introduced. Let's just hope the next 2 issues are better. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned next time where I shall be analysing issue number 3 and 4.